I guess, you know, I'd say to you guys, but, you know, NF as well.
Need a little more, I'm so motivated. Time please, oh my god. I'ma need a little more, can't believe they hate it. Time please, oh my god. I'ma need a little more, out the slums I made it.
Yo, welcome everyone to a new video. So the day has come, the search has come out. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you know this is a very interesting day for me, but I guess things have changed a lot, so it's very interesting seeing his journey. You guys have known what I've thought about his music, you know, even 2 videos ago where I talked about my hope for this album, and I kind of got answers and more questions. So the album is 20 tracks. It is quite long to get through, to be honest, especially with the subject matter. You guys, you know NF. It's darker, talking about, you know, similar stuff quite a bit. And this album has, I was very curious, you know, because he is blown up since Perception. He is much bigger now, and I was very interested to see his perspective on that. And he had an interlude on here where he talks about how his darkest moment was when Let You Down was like #1 on Billboard, or, you know, like the most successful song he's ever had, and he was like basically feeling suicidal. So, and he mentioned that last year on another song that he was feeling suicidal. So that is interesting and very sad at the same time. Another hope, I was hoping he would look to God a bit more. I'll get to that a little later. The sound of the album is, you know, the typical, like, you know, NF sound, but it has like progressed a little bit. He sounds, you know, crispy. I mean, obviously his production is like, you know, he just has a bigger budget now. So that was good on that front. You know, like there's a choir that came in, you know, the usual orchestra stuff. You know, it sounded good. Production was very good. Similar type of songs as well. It seemed like the album was kind of in 2 parts, where the first part was mostly the conceptual stuff, and as you got near the bottom, it was more loosely conceptual, with like more kind of hit type of songs. Like I liked his flow on Leave Me Alone. I found that interesting. I'd say the songs that have the most replay value for me would be No Excuses and Options. You guys will know, you know, like those are the more like banger songs, like the harder sounding, I guess, you know, motivation kind of songs. I also like Time as well. Like it's one of his more hopeful songs. I did feel at the end of the album, I felt like I was left hanging a little bit. I guess having Time at the end kind of caps it off a bit, but I guess there was no outro like the last one. So I wish there was that, but you know, you kind of get the message. The message of the entire album, it's sad, man. I mean, it's probably not a surprise to you guys. You know, you can really sense he could almost call the album a search for God, because, you know, a lot of it is talking about, you know, how he hates himself. You know, the usual stuff, you know, all his anxieties and stuff. You know, how fame has changed his friends, and how there's just this vicious cycle of kind, you know, stuff that he's talked about before, and Perception as well, where, you know, wanting to hold on to this pain, how he likes it, but you know it's unhealthy. I guess the difference between Perception and The Search, besides from, you know, the obvious change that he is a lot more famous now, and he talks about those aspects. Every time he talks about God now, it always, I guess it's quite amplified, because he doesn't talk about God as much as he used to, but he does talk about God a lot more than Perception, and I guess it's quite revealing, and I guess it gives like insight, because, you know, a lot of us have wondered, you know, like where he's at. And no, my hope is, you know, like obviously he's gone famous off making music about how sad he is and life situations he's gone through, but my hope for him at least is for him to get better. I guess I'll tell you the conclusion at the end, but some quotes that I found very telling, and really intriguing and sad, and interesting. So the song My Stress: wonder why I was wrong, wonder was I wrong thinking this is where God led me, or did I get involved with something that's too heavy? Something I find very interesting, because I remember, I think it was a KJ 52 interview, and he was talking about when Nate or NF made this transition from his more Christian rap to secular, and he said, from what I remember, NF told him that this will be his like last like Christian event, and that he was gonna go mainstream. So I find that very, very interesting. Not saying that there was a bad decision for him, because obviously it's worked out. You're able to reach more people, so I'm not taking that angle, but just him wondering that, maybe his approach to it, I don't know. And then he goes on to say, I drive until I'm lost and sit in my car and start yelling. I'm just hoping God helps me to stop stressing. On the song Nate, if you've got questions or need advice, talk to God, because he's the only one who listens. He's talking to younger Nate there. Let Me Go. Now this is probably one of the saddest ones. You know, he talks about life stuff, you know, in his previous stuff that's happened to him, but this is almost sadder because he's at the point where you'd think, and like he even talks about where you'd think all these issues would be progressing or getting better, but they're actually getting worse as far as the way he sees himself with how he's gained fame and money and stuff, and how it's just quite empty. I wonder how I look in God's eyes. Am I a good person or a lost one? Then he says, noose around my soul, I just cut the rope. Then he goes on to say, I pray to God to ask if hope's real, and if it is, and I was thinking maybe you could introduce us, we ain't met still. And then he goes further on, am I hellbound or will I find heaven? So obviously he's searching for hope. Hate myself, he says, pray to God. One of the, I guess the hooks of it is pray to God with my arms open. If this is it, then I feel hopeless. So this entire album, admittedly it has been a while since I've listened to NF. I find listening to his music now quite sad, and you know, I was in a place of depression at one point, and that's when I really got into NF, which was Mansion. And then, you know, I guess, you know, it did help me a lot listening to Mansion. I guess now that I don't listen to him as much, I kind of feel like if you listen to it too much, it can kind of create a cycle where you just start constantly thinking about your problems rather than the hope that's ahead of you. And I guess, you know, I'd say to you guys, but, you know, NF as well, because he believes in God, and I believe the God he's talking about is, you know, like Jesus, because, you know, that's where he's come from. Every time he references God, it's assumed that. And he said he's a Christian. And he's asking God where hope is, and he wants to be introduced to him. And I think for me, like, the difference for me is when, you know, I'd say for him as well, you know, like, you give over all those anxieties to God, and that opens you up for, you know, the Holy Spirit inside of you when you put your faith in Jesus to renew your mind, renew your heart, and out of that you're able to, you know, love more, have hope. And it's a process, you know, like I've had my down moments as well since I've done that, but the joy in life that flows out of that, you know, like I'll, you know, let something go to God and things change like that. My hope is that, you know, NF or Nate is able to do that. His music would sound a lot different because he wouldn't be focusing on, you know, how he hates himself all the time rather than who he is in God. You know, God made him in his image. He gave us not just life eternally, but life here. We can live that with joy and peace. And focusing on those things is only just going to put you in a spiral of hating yourself, reminding yourself of your past and making that define you rather than what God's done. Jesus died so you don't have to carry those burdens anymore. Those aren't for you to carry, but it's also a process as well. So, you know, I'm definitely not perfect, but I'm definitely in a better place than I was 3 years ago. I definitely have my blips as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts on NF's album. I'm sure you guys who don't believe in God have a different perspective on it. Let me know what you guys think. I know most of you guys, at least my core is like, you know, all Christian. So I'm interested to see what you guys think as well. Yeah, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at DavidLivick. Subscribe if you want to see more. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video.
Did you expect? There's no control.